Welcome back. In this video, you're going to learn about managing SQL Server and databases out of deploying them in an Azure SQL Infrastructure Platform Services. I'm mainly going to cover two different sections. The first one is managing SQL Server virtual machines in Azure, and the second one is managing SQL Azure Database Solutions from the PaaS perspective. Managing your SQL Server database solutions, which means the one I deployed in the first video in this module, is basically nothing different than managing and running your SQL Server infrastructure on premises. You can use the SQL Server Management Studio directly from your SQL Server VM. Or if you want, you run the SQL Server Management Studio from another machine in the same subnet, or at least a subnet that allows network communication to the SQL Server backend, which could be a jump host or a management station. If you extend your Azure management environment by using point-to-site, site-to-site, VPN or ExpressRoute, it also allows you to natively direct connect to the SQL Server VM, or allowing cloud-based SQL Server Management Studio connectivity from your client to the SQL Server VM, and even connecting using the full-blown SQL Server running port 1433. But then obviously you have to watch out and make sure that on the Azure network security groups, this specific SQL communication is allowed, explicitly opening up the ports and allowing the traffic. But in the end, it's running a Windows virtual machine, it's running SQL Server on top of the operating system, and management is done from SQL Server Management Studio, in the exact same way as if you're running the SQL Server VM on premises. Now, in the previous video, I already talked about SQL Azure databases in the PaaS approach. Management from SQL Azure databases is again done from SQL Server Management Studio. So you're connecting to the Azure running SQL Server and then connecting to SQL database. Now there is one small additional configuration that needs to be done after the database has been deployed in Azure, where you need to provide firewall settings, entering your client IP address, or if you want an IP subnet, and then allowing a direct connection through the internet to the SQL Azure database. And don't worry, it's an encrypted connection, which means security has been taken care of. So let me show you in a quick demo how you have to configure this from the portal. So I'm connecting to my SQL Azure database, the one that I deployed in the previous video, where security itself is done on server level. So here I'm selecting the SQL Server, selecting the firewall option, and then in here I have this interesting button, Client IP, which will add my specific client IP, the one that I'm connecting right now, and basically using my public IP address from my location. Or I could also provide a full range out of my internet security groups. After saving this configuration, giving it a couple of minutes to make sure that the policy has been refreshed, it will allow me a native connection from my admin station at home, directly connecting to my internet-based running SQL Server in Azure, and then connecting to my database. It's really that easy. This completes my demo on how to configure SQL Server Management, allowing management directly from SQL Server Management Studio to your SQL Server in Azure or to the SQL Azure Platform as a Service database. I hope to see you again in the next video, where I'm going to talk about SQL Azure Database Backup and Restores, as well as running your full SQL Server virtual machines.